Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Malice in the Mitten. I am your host, Tracy Preston, along with my bestie, Christine Mulligan. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Trace. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming back for some more Malice. What are we getting into today, Trace?
Well, guess what? Here we are, as promised, the kickoff of Season 4. Woohoo! Now,
Unreal.
I know. It does really seem like it's gone super fast. It's very exciting. Now, before I get into the story, which was researched and written by Angela Sinclair, this is a story that has a deep and personal connection to Angela. For one, I am thankful that she did this story, and I know it's been a very long, painful, heartbreaking road. So thank you, Angela. Now, we're going to start the show with a note from Angela to you all. I remember the day Mary's disappearance aired on the local news. I was a mother of 2 young baby girls. My husband at the time said he knew her fiancé and that he knew he did it, that he did something to her, which his guess was either a pig farm or a swamp. I was in shock. I remember it very vividly, and there is rarely a day that goes by that I don't think of Mary. I felt so bad that her children, one of whom was about to be a father for the first time, when her family was going through this horrible experience. I have read the Facebook page dedicated to finding Mary and the blogs years ago, along with going down many rabbit holes in search for answers, in hopes of finding out that they had finally found her after all these years. Years later, I met her son, as he was the best friend of our lead guitarist for our band. I was able to get to know Josh, and he often spoke of his mother and how much he missed her. I know her disappearance weighs heavily on the whole family to this day. I have always wished for closure for them all. I hope someday they may all find peace and that Mary is found. Perhaps someone who listens to this podcast may know of something that can help solve this case. 20 years later, and she is still missing. Please help bring Mary home so they may find peace. Angela, I hope and pray this episode will touch someone who knows something and that they are compelled to finally do the right thing and come forward. So, let's get into it. This is Season 4, Episode 1, Mary Denise Lands. Mary Denise Lands was born on September 3rd, 1964. She was 5 foot 6 inches tall and weighed about 160 pounds when she disappeared. She had brown hair and beautiful brown eyes. She was born to Clifford and Anita Marshall. She has 2 adult children, Stacy, her daughter, whose father was Gary, who was Mary's first husband, and her oldest, Josh, who was about to be a first-time father. Mary was so excited to be a grandmother. Josh's father and Mary were high school sweethearts, but they never married. She came from a tight-knit family. She had a good job at a doctor's office working in the billing department. Mary loved her children very much. She lived in Marshall with her fiancé, Christopher Pratt, and they had been together for about 4 years. Ironically, her maiden name was also Marshall, and she lived in Marshall. She seemed very happy. Those who knew Mary described her as kind-hearted and having many friends. She has a brother named Mike Marshall. She had been married and divorced twice. Mary met Chris at a bar that she was working at as a part-time bartender. They had been engaged for approximately a year. Chris had been married previously, and on the surface, it appeared that Mary and Chris had a good relationship. However, in Chris's previous relationships and marriage, he was known to have been abusive, controlling, and had a history of domestic violence. According to family members, Chris was both physically and mentally abusive towards Mary. Her family did not learn of the abuse until sometime later in 2006, when they found evidence of broken bones and bruises. As most domestic abuse victims feel embarrassed or threatened if they tell anyone of the abuse that is happening, she kept it all secret from her family and friends. 39-year-old Mary Denise Lance was last seen in Marshall, Michigan on March 12, 2004. She disappeared after walking away from her apartment in the 1200 block of Arm Street that night. Mary was last seen between 10 and 10:30 p.m. in Marshall, Michigan, following an argument with her fiancé. And all of that is according to her fiancé, Chris. Mary allegedly told Chris that she was going for a walk following an argument. He says he last saw her walking around the carport of their apartment complex. Chris was quoted in an article by Trace Christensen in the Battle Creek Inquirer titled, quote, "More Suspicious Every Day. Search continues for Marshall woman missing since March 12th. This is a quote from Chris in that article. Quote, "I think what happened is she walked around the corner of the carport. The last time I saw her, and she headed south. I have a lot of scenarios. I can't find a clue." The article also went on to say, quote, "It is becoming more suspicious every day. The county's Major Crimes Task Force, which includes investigators from the FBI, the Michigan State Police, Battle Creek Police, Springfield Police, Emmett Township, Marshall, Albion, and the Calhoun County Sheriff's Department have all been working on the case. A state police helicopter searched around Marshall on Friday afternoon, and more than a dozen members of the Southwest Michigan Search and Rescue began the search on foot late Friday." The article ends with another statement from Chris, quote, "It has all been wonderful until Friday, until I couldn't find her." He said, "No one can imagine the pain he is feeling." Quote, "It will make you feel weak. Your legs start to tingle and start to cramp, and you feel like you just can't stand up. Everybody has been calling, and they are worried to death. It has been a hell of an ordeal for everyone." Now, I watched an interview with Chris, which you will find in the show notes, and this was during an interview right after Mary was reported missing in their apartment, which I believe that's where they were. He wasn't teary, he wasn't shaken, he was just spitting out words that to me sounded very rehearsed. Watch it and see for yourself.
I was just going to say, just with you reading some of his quotes, they sounded fishy. They sounded like he was trying to sound like somebody that he wasn't. And I don't even know him. I don't know why I got that vibe. It just, I don't know if it was the words that he used or the order in which he used them. I don't know, like, it's been a hell of an ordeal or whatever you said.
Right.
Just the way you read that quote, I was like, this guy. And she just took a walk and disappeared? Like, that's the story?
Yeah, after they had an argument, she just took off. Now, we'll get to it, but it's really wicked cold outside. You know, even for March, it's still snowing, which it can snow here in April. So, yeah, and if you watch the video, he doesn't have a look of worry. He doesn't have a furrowed brow. He isn't shaking. He isn't teary. It's like he's constantly searching for the words that he's rehearsed. Like, I just wanted to smack him.
Even without watching the video, it gives you the vibe that he's just talking about something that, like, he's talking about, it's like a guy at the water cooler at work that's talking about current events that doesn't really have any idea about what's really happening.
Right, exactly. And
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the vibe I'm getting.
Yeah, well, you picked up good on that one because that's exactly the vibe I got when I was watching him. It's crazy. Chris reported that Mary had been wearing a SpongeBob print scrub top and dark blue scrub pants, slip-on shoes, and a brown leather bomber jacket, which was her favorite jacket, and her white mesh purse. Chris said she did not take her phone nor her keys to her brand new Dodge Durango, and she also left her engagement ring. When she left the apartment the night of March 12th, 2004, it was a frigid night. It was 19 degrees with winds of 10 to 15 miles per hour, along with snow flurries. So none of that story makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay. So she left the house in the snow with slip-on shoes and nothing of value. She was just like, okay, I'm going to go out into the snow with nothing on me, but a pair of scrubs, slip-on shoes, and, oh, okay, a bomber jacket. Like,
Yeah,
that doesn't even sound feasible.
it's nuts. Like, if you're that upset after an argument with your fiance, why wouldn't you just hop in your nice warm Durango and take
Yeah, and just
off?
rock. Yeah, exactly. And oh, by the way, why would I leave my ring home?
Right. So clearly
Why-
it was a big fight.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah, he killed her
I'm
and
not
then took the
this guy at
ring.
all, so I don't know how much more we're gonna get into this story where there's gonna be any mystery. I don't know where the mystery is in this one.
Yeah,
And
it all makes
just
sense.
walking around free. Is that what you're gonna tell me?
It all points to one person. One
All right.
person. All right. So, again, why would she leave her phone and her Durango and go for a walk when it is so cold? Why would she leave wearing only her work clothes, slip-on shoes, and a jacket to face a cold winter's night? And as we just said, none of it makes any sense. Well, it's been 20 years, and Mary has never returned home and hasn't been heard from since. A few days prior to her disappearance, Mary's parents had moved to California. Mary's mother, Anita Marshall, begged her daughter to move out west with them, but Mary didn't want to leave Marshall. You see, she was getting ready to become a grandmother for the first time, and she wanted to be there for the arrival of her grandchild. This was something she would never have missed, ever. On March 14th, 2004, 2 days after her disappearance, Pratt called Mary's family in California looking for her. He asked them if they had seen her. Now, that's just ridiculous. And following that call, Mary's brother called the Marshall Police Department to report his sister missing. Her family knew something was wrong and immediately headed back to Michigan from California to try to find their daughter. According to private investigator Jim Carlin, who was hired by her family, Mary went to the Marshall Party Store around 6:30 p.m. the night of March 12th. That's the night she went missing. She purchased a soda and a pack of gum, and this was all captured by video surveillance footage, before meeting up with Chris at a nearby tanning salon. The couple was heard arguing in the salon, according to witnesses. Mary had also made plans to meet up with her friends later that evening, but when the friend came to pick her up, Chris told her Mary wasn't available to go out anymore. Like, really? What in the hell is that all about?
Oh, so he had already beaten her and nobody could see her. And she was probably in the house unconscious. Is that what's happening?
That's what I'm thinking.
Oh. And the friend was like, okay, I'll take your word for it, and just left?
They did not feel right about it. The friend was very, very puzzled, like, what in the hell is that all about? Now, it's 2004. I don't know.
Okay, but before you get any further, I also had a question. On that video of her at 6:30, was she wearing scrubs, slip-on shoes, and a bomber jacket?
Didn't say.
I would be interested to know what she was wearing on that video.
Yeah. Well, she worked in a medical office, so I would think 6:30 would be shortly after work. But I don't know. There's more.
Okay.
So police used tracking dogs, and they were able to track Mary's scent to a nearby hotel after she went missing. However, no further clues as to her whereabouts were found. She did not rent a room for the night, and her trail went cold. Authorities questioned Chris after Mary was initially reported missing, but following his initial statement to them, he went quiet and hasn't spoken with them since. Now, according to Chris, he had not heard or seen Mary since Friday night around 10:30 p.m. He said that she told him she was going to go for a walk and left on her own, and the last time he saw her, she was walking around the carport. By Tuesday, search parties had been organized to look for Mary. Many people, including volunteers, helped in the search. Missing person flyers were printed, and volunteers posted those flyers everywhere they could. The local news channel did their best to keep Mary's disappearance in the spotlight, and almost daily they did that for several weeks. News anchors were covering Mary's case. In the evenings, everyone gathered to pray for Mary and to light candles. Despite the cold weather, they were vigilant in their search and gathering strength and support. And they had also paid for a couple of different billboards as the years have gone by, and just nothing. So during the first few weeks, the FBI was brought in to assist the Marshall Police Department. Law enforcement used multiple dogs to attempt to track Mary's scent, and at first it appeared to be successful. Unfortunately, Mary was not to be found. Now, let's talk about a man named Tim Bryant. Tim Bryant was a sergeant with the Marshall Police Department. Chris and Tim were, at the very least, acquaintances and possibly friends. There was a call between Chris and Tim the following Sunday after Mary's disappearance, which lasted 11 minutes. This call was made at 1:30 in the morning. Now, Tim denied ever talking to Chris. According to Tim, he let Mary's best friend Sue use his phone. He had gone into one of the local bars, the Stagecoach, making his rounds, and this is when he saw Sue, and she asked to use his phone. Now, the interesting thing is that when questioned about the incident, Sue said she never asked to use his phone, nor was she at the bar that evening. She said she was at home and that her daughter had a friend over. The information could in fact be verified as true. It was known that Tim had a family member who was a known drug dealer, and Chris was involved in dealing drugs as well. This phone call, at the very least, is highly suspicious. Why would they be having a conversation in the wee hours of the morning just 2 days after Mary disappeared? As well as numerous statements from people in the community saying that they had, quote, partied, drank, done drugs, among other things that shouldn't be mentioned, with some of the law enforcement while being underage and in high school. Many comments were made as to not only were Chris and Tim acquaintances, they were buddies, and they all partied together. Tim is no longer with the police department, and there have been many changes made within the department to date.
He never really got called onto the carpet for that. He just said, oh, somebody else used my phone, and never told any of the story about it.
Yeah.
So nothing ever happened with that. So that was definitely a Buddy in Blue kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm thinking too.
Ew. And this is 20 years ago, though, right? So
Yeah.
that was commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
The good old boys club.
The good old boys club. Cover me, buddy. I got you. You got me, right?
Ew.
We're old pals. We go way back. Roughly 3 months after Mary's disappearance, there was an incident at a flea market in Homer, which is not too far from Marshall. A family member of Mary's noticed something very strange. Chris Pratt was there. He had a booth set up, and they noticed that Mary's brown leather bomber jacket, along with personal items of Mary's, including clothes and picture frames, were all for sale. When Mary's dad, Cliff, was notified of Chris selling this jacket, he contacted the police department to inform them of the item, as it was involved in the case directly. And to this, the response was for Cliff, the dad, to go pick it up himself. Stacy, Mary's daughter, went to retrieve that jacket. No one seemed at all interested in the fact that Chris was selling her jacket. First, if the love of your life is missing, why would you sell their belongings, especially so soon after the fact? Second, this was the same bomber jacket he told police she was wearing the night she left. When confronted about it, Chris left the flea market, as well as everything there, but not before he wrote a note, quote, everything free. Stacy, now with the leather bomber jacket in possession, went to the police department and turned it in. I want to give Jim Carlin, the private investigator in this case, some big-ass props. He has never stopped looking for Mary in all this time, and he has spent over 17,000 hours on his case. Now, let's just think about that for a moment. 17,000 hours. That's a really long time. And he did this all pro bono. He doggedly asked for help from the Marshall Police Department, but hasn't gotten too far with them. Jim dedicated a blog in hopes that someone may give the authorities a clue as to what happened to Mary. It is widely believed that there are people who actually know what happened that night, but are either too afraid to come forward, or they support Chris Pratt and do not want to rat him out. He states many times that anyone could write in anonymously or contact him or the authorities with any information regarding her disappearance. Mary's Durango was taken by the police, only to sit at Bud's towing yard for a couple of years, out in the elements, not secure at all. Even the tires came up missing. Once it went to impound finally, it was still in an unsecure location, and there were petitions to have it returned to the family if it was no longer needed in the investigation. Now, this Durango was new when Mary bought it, with only 11,000 miles on it, and from the pictures taken, it was trashed. Oh, and there's this. An entire year's worth of evidence came up missing. Now, how does a year's worth of evidence come up missing?
It sounds like this officer may have been involved from the start.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ew.
Yes.
It really does sound like they intentionally covered something up for him. What was the deal with Chris? He was just a nobody, right?
Right. He was a nobody. A big fucking nobody.
I don't understand. Like, I'm a little bit confused of how he got this cop to help cover stuff up.
I don't know. They must have done some shady shit when they were kids and doing lots of drugs.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Unreal.
Yeah. Now, it is because of Jim's determination that they were able to find out about the abuse going on between Mary and Chris. Cliff and Anita were able to get Mary's medical records and, in one case, an ER visit for a broken finger. Now, under Michigan law, this specific type of injury must be reported, as broken fingers are often a result of domestic abuse. Unfortunately, it was not reported. One of the hospital workers was a relative of Mary's, and Mary had begged and pleaded with her cousin to not say anything. Mary's medical records detailed bruises on Mary's body, along with broken toes, a broken wrist, and a broken arm. And yes, accidents do happen, and broken bones also happen, but not to the frequency and not very common in a grown woman who works in a medical office. There was domestic abuse happening in that household, and let's not forget that in Chris's previous relationships, there were also reports of domestic abuse. As I have said in the past, especially in the story of Francine Hughes that we did, domestic abuse will always escalate. Always. There are just so many unanswered questions in Mary's case. For years, many people, including Jim Carlin, begged for help not only from the Marshall Police Department, but everyone in the community to help bring Mary home. It seemed to be the opinions of many people commenting on the blogs written by Jim and on the Facebook page called Justice for Mary, Denise, Lance, which is a page dedicated to finding Mary, that this has been swept under the proverbial rug. Mary's case is cold, but murder cases, they don't have a statute of limitations, meaning if this case can finally be solved, Chris can be tried for the disappearance and murder of Mary. However, not everyone in the police department felt the same way. Now, there were a few that have helped the family try to bring Mary home, as well as continuing to keep Mary's story alive and in the hearts of the community, hoping against all hope that someday Mary will be found and justice will finally be served, not only to the person, Chris, who committed this atrocity and brought her family, friends, and the community of Marshall so much pain and loss. There have been vigils held in memory of Mary over the many years that she has been missing. The people of the community and her family have not forgotten her, and they continue to pray for her return so they may lay her to rest. Now, I did read that there was a GoFundMe page set up to raise enough money so the family can purchase a plot and a headstone for her. Some of the points of interest are, in fact, Mary's brown leather bomber jacket that, she apparently had been wearing the night of her disappearance. Why did Chris have it in his possession if he never saw her again that night? Mary was also known to have carried her birth certificate with her in her purse at all times. Now get this. On Mother's Day, Chris had the audacity to walk into Anita Marshall's place of employment, now that's Mary's mother, and handed her Mary's birth certificate and wished her a happy Mother's Day. Say what? I would have pounced on that, dude. Probably would have landed myself in jail for that, but boy, oh boy, wouldn't that have been worth the jail time.
I don't even understand. What? That just, I have no words. I feel you, though. I think if I was Mary's mother and the guy that most likely caused harm to my daughter and resulted in her disappearance came to me on Mother's Day to hand me my daughter's birth certificate, probably would have beat his ass, like right then and there.
Absolutely. I would have lunged. I would have kicked right off that desk. I would have launched at him like a superhero.
Like, that's almost a little bit sadistic.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And I can't even believe that he did that to her mother. Like, did he just want to, keep turning the knife in her heart, And
yeah. I don't even get that. I feel like that was rude is the wrong word, but the right vibe. Like, rude on a whole nother level.
Exactly. Because he is
egregiously rude.
Mm-hmm. Because he is guilty, guilty, guilty.
Yeah, I probably would have took that chance to beat his ass, for sure.
Pencil right in the eye. Bam!
Right.
Now, how would he have her birth certificate in his possession if she had taken her white mesh purse with her when she left that night, right? Now, the FBI, they were told just a few weeks into their investigation of Mary that their help was no longer needed. And why would someone tell the FBI that their assistance was no longer needed is completely beyond me. And can they even do that? Like, once the FBI is involved, they're involved, right?
Well, I don't know. I think there's guidelines to that. Like, I don't know. Like, when the case goes cold, I think it gets assigned to one department. I don't know. Let me not speak to that. But I think there are, like, protocol situations where they do back off if it goes cold.
Maybe.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they can tell them that they're no longer needed. I think things have to go that way. I can't speak to that intelligently enough. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, I can't either, but from, all the, many, many, many shows, crime shows I've watched, like Real Crime, right? Like, I know the FBI absolutely gets involved, like, once it crosses, like, state lines, you know what I mean? But I don't know, maybe they just asked for help, and because they asked for help, maybe they could say, hey, we got it, thanks. I don't know. It just seems weird as hell to me that they would just be, hey, we're good, thanks, appreciate ya.
Yeah, maybe they asked for help along some guidelines, and then when they proved those guidelines didn't fit, then they backed out, maybe.
Yeah. And what's really sad is, the FBI has a multitude of resources that, local and state police don't have access to. So I just found it super, super odd. Now, Chris was also given a polygraph, but those results have never been released. Now, I had a thought, when we were watching that episode and the one that we did for our final season 3, just like Kathy, the birth mother of Andrea Bowman, why doesn't someone raise some money and submit a form to the Freedom of Information Act and get every single legal document they can get their hands on? I mean, that could prove fruitful, I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised that the private investigator hasn't done that.
Yeah, so private investigator, maybe we should get that done.
Yeah, maybe.
Hint, hint. All right, now there's a video on YouTube of some findings by investigators in a home that Chris used to own. What was found was a bra, a pajama top, and matching bottoms, along with a washcloth that appeared to have blood stains on them, and they were stuffed behind a water heater in the basement. Now, to be clear, Chris was no longer living at the residence, and the current homeowner only found these in the Michigan basement behind the water heater because he had to replace it. Now, these items found behind the water heater were not handled properly at all. I mean, hello, this is freaking evidence. What Why would there be any clothing stuffed behind a water heater in a Michigan basement? Now, let me explain to everybody what a Michigan basement is. It's not a finished basement. It is a dirt floor basement. And they're creepy. I've been in a couple. I don't like it. But, I mean, think about it. You're hiding it behind bricks and dirt behind a water heater. That should be suspicious as shit. And P.S., this is Chris's old home. So anyway.
And he lived there at the time that the disappearance happened?
I think he may have lived there. I don't know the exact timeline, but when Mary and Chris were living together, they were living in an apartment. So I can only assume that this is a house maybe he rented or something like after he moved from the apartment.
Oh, okay.
Right. So the investigators did not bag these clothes. They didn't use gloves until after. And like they're handling them. Again, it's in the show notes. You can watch the video. It's bananas. They're just bare hands, taking all these clothes out, going through them, looking at labels, like really going over them barehanded. It's just nuts. So they never put their gloves on until after they took all these items outside. And then they laid them down in the grass and dirt in the yard. Such mishandling of evidence can lose valuable evidence such as trace hairs, fibers, and DNA. Big foul fellas, like what in the actual? Was this type of sloppy work due to lack of training on how to collect and handle evidence? Was it mishandled in hopes that evidence would be lost and not found? Well, that's something we will never know. Let's talk about June 24th, 2007. Chris, once again, was in the spotlight. Mary has been gone for 3 years at this point, but Chris can't seem to calm his shitty nature. The Michigan State Police responded to a call at the Pratt residence. When police arrived, they found that Chris had assaulted his new girlfriend, Noreen Parker. Noreen was a mess, and the house had been trashed. For example, the phone had been ripped out of the wall, and the furnishings inside the home had all been disheveled, like tossed about, thrown around. Now, at this point, no one would be surprised to learn that upon realizing police were on their way, Chris had taken off. But thankfully, they caught up with him just a few hours later. He was arrested and taken to jail. Noreen was very afraid of Chris, and there had been some debate as to whether or not she would actually testify against him. But on December 6th, 2007, Pratt was found guilty on several charges. 2 of these were unlawful imprisonment and criminal sexual assault. He was ordered to serve a 4 to 15-year sentence for the violent assault on Noreen. Chris could not stop himself from breaking the law and could not control his abusive nature. Chris was paroled in November of 2013 after serving nearly 7 years. Well, this old song and dance sounds familiar, doesn't it? Unlike Mary, Noreen was the lucky one. She survived that night. Now, at this point, it's been 14 years since Mary went missing when Chris, yet again, finds himself in a pickle. In 2018, Chris is now 54 years old when he is accused of raping a 16-year-old girl. His trial was held in Calhoun County Circuit Court. The girl, now 19 years old, in October of 2021. According to the article on News Talk WBCK 95.3, during her testimony, the young woman told jurors she was raped by Chris at his home in Albion on September 11th, 2018. She went on to say she had been staying in a residential treatment facility in Albion called Star Commonwealth prior to running away in hopes of meeting up with her boyfriend who lived on the east side of Michigan. I just want to stop for a second. Doesn't Star Commonwealth sound familiar in Albion? Isn't that where Rose Larner was for a minute?
I think that does sound familiar.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, that just popped in my brain. All right, so anyway, let's get back to the testimony. The young woman told the court that she was walking when Chris came up to her and offered to help her out. She went on to say that Chris took her to his home. She used his phone, Now, I'm assuming it's a house phone, right, to call her boyfriend. She said her boyfriend was unable to come for her at that time, so without any place to go, she agreed to stay with Chris. She said that Chris had brought her a few things. Now, I'm not sure what those items were, and that he also smoked some pot with her. She ended up falling asleep later that night, but was woken up to Chris touching her, and then she was raped. The following day, Chris had driven her to Holly to deliver her to her boyfriend, but she didn't tell him what had happened to her the night before with Chris. A week later, she was found and returned to Star, but she ran away again. Now, as crazy as this sounds, she made it back to Chris's home. She stated that she didn't know where else to go. The victim did acknowledge to the court that yes, her story had changed a few times before telling the court that she had tried to forget the night of the rape. Chris was charged with third-degree criminal sexual conduct, also known as rape. He was held in jail, but unfortunately, due to COVID, he was released after several months, and Chris was ultimately found not guilty of third-degree criminal sexual conduct. He is one lucky son of a gun.
It is kind of crazy how fortunate he is due to incompetent situations.
Yeah, he's like Teflon.
Yeah, bananas.
It's totally freaking nuts. In 2011, Cliff and Anita, which are Mary's parents, they petitioned the court to have Mary declared legally dead. On April 13th, 2011, Mary's loved ones met with Judge Michael Jaconet. The hearing started at 2 p.m. and lasted for almost 30 minutes. Several people gave testimony, including her father, Cliff. He said if Mary was still alive, she would have been in contact with her family. He went on to say that before her disappearance, Mary would call him several times a day just to check on him. Marshal Chief Deputy Scott McDonald also testified and is also the lead investigator on her case. He testified that they had been unable to find any evidence that Mary was still alive. Neither her bank account nor credit cards had been used since her disappearance. The judge ruled in favor, and she was legally declared deceased. Now, over the years, there have been many tips and leads on this case, along with many searches. The latest to date that is known was June 9th, 2019, a Sunday in Calhoun County, Michigan. It was conducted after 2 separate tips were received that Mary's remains were on the property. Cadaver dogs were brought in along with volunteers from the Venus Foundation of Missing Persons Division. Despite searching most of the day, no evidence or body was found. Unfortunately, no trace of Mary has ever been found in any of the searches. Christopher Pratt remains a person of interest in the disappearance of Mary Denise Lands, and we beg you, if you or anyone you know has any information about the disappearance of Mary Denise Lands, please contact the Marshall Police Department. Their phone number is 269-781-2596. Again, if you have any information or know someone who has it, call the Marshall Police Department. Again, their number, 269-781-2596. I hope someone speaks up. Somebody has to know something. I mean, you can't be that good to commit a crime and keep your mouth shut about it. I mean.
But that's the thing, is if Chris did this by himself, with the help of possibly an officer that was his buddy, I mean, there's no one to know anything. And Michigan is very vast and wide, and there are plenty of places to dispose of pieces. I mean, he's already, possibly the pajama shirt and pants. Hello, you mean scrub top and scrub pants and underwear and a bra were found behind a water heater, and the bomber jacket was found, you trying to sell it years later? I mean, all of the evidence is smattered all over the place. And the only person that knows what happened is Chris.
Yeah, exactly.
Proven himself to be an abomination of humanity. So, unfortunately, there's nowhere my brain can think of who would know anything other than Chris and possibly his crooked police buddy.
Yeah. Now, I just want to clarify, they were not scrub pants or tops that were found. It was an actual pajama set. And again, in the video, I watched it. It's like, they look like soft two-piece pajama top, pajama bottom, and a bra. And during the video, they were making statements that it looked like there was blood on them. So, maybe she was wearing her scrub pants and scrub top when, I would love to know, I would love to see that video of, the video footage of her at the store. I couldn't find it anywhere when I was looking online. But, hey, maybe, who knows? Maybe he attacked her at night. Maybe he, like you said, maybe she got comfortable, got her pajamas on because they were fighting. And she's like, fuck it, I'm not going out. You blew my mood, dude,
Yeah.
And he didn't report it for 2 days. So he had the keys to her Durango. And like you said, Michigan's a big place. They could have taken her anywhere.
And Durango didn't have any evidence in it, or they never even checked it, because you really didn't say. You just said that it was sitting at a car place forever and disintegrated, which is also a crime in and of itself, because that could have went to her family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was an asset.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. Who knows what was found in that van? Because remember, a year's worth of evidence just poof. Where'd it go? Where did it go? So
such a poor woman is never really going to get the human justice. And so now all we can hope for is that whatever happens when we go to the next place or whatever, is karma's going to get him. Karma's going to get him, no doubt, to sin.
Yeah, and he's certainly not going to change his behavior. I mean, button it up now because he's, gotten in trouble. And that's the thing, too. It's like, isn't there enough, what do you call it, circumstantial evidence? I mean, take the history of the beating of the other girlfriend, the raping of a 16-year-old. This is not a nice guy. Like, he's a total piece.
Yeah, but don't they always say circumstantial evidence is never enough?
Yeah, but there's been cases that have won on circumstantial evidence or circumstantial cases. There have been some. I don't know. I really hope that he's had loose lips and somebody finally caves and says something. I'm sure you'll get a deal.
For all our listeners that are listening, if they are in an abusive relationship, you need to repeat that again. About if you're in an abusive relationship, it will only escalate. And if you're not feeling warm and fuzzy in any way, shape, or form, then you should not be in that relationship. Get out. Get out. Get out. Please don't end up like Mary.
Yeah, agreed. It's the whole domestic abuse thing is just makes me angry. And just like you said, Christine, the moment it happens to you, the very first instance of abuse, that's the time to get out. That's the easiest time to go. Get out then before you're wrapped up in it for years, before you end up dead.
Yeah, and the thing is like people need to realize sometimes, and I don't mean to associate this with Chris too much, but sometimes people get together and it's just volatile between those two people. It doesn't mean that either one of the people are bad in any way. You still need to part ways, get out before it gets worse. No harm, no foul, just leave it as it is. Toxicity amongst two people doesn't mean that it will carry you through the rest of your life. It doesn't mean that you have to be, labeled as a bad person for the rest of your life just because you had one instance of abuse. But what it does mean is that you should not stay in that relationship where that instance of abuse was, because there it will fester. So and I say all this, and I know it sounds a little round robin-ish, but a lot of women are like, oh, well, it was just a one-off, or, oh, we just had that one moment that was bad. He's really a good guy, and he apologized, and everything's all great. Or vice versa, because I don't ever want to imply that women don't do the abusing too, because they have, and it is possible, and it does happen. It's just not as likely. So I'm rambling a little bit, but my point is, if you are in an abusive relationship, be it mental, emotional, or physical, it's not the right fit. People are in a relationship and they're not backing each other up 9 times out of 10.
If it's a relationship that is not filled with love, what are you in it for?
Respect, mutual respect and admiration. Get out. Get out, get out, get out. There's plenty of other people out there, and you can't make puzzle pieces fit. You can't make things work if they're not working on their own.
You can't put a round object in a square peg.
Yeah. Look at how many stories we've talked about, how the women just kind of feel like, I can fix them, I can make them better. Oh, it wasn't that bad, or oh, I actually did this, and I did make him upset. And please, no. If somebody's putting their hands on you, they do not respect you, and they most certainly do not love you.
Amen. Well, I truly hope that someone out there who is listening, or if you're listening and you know someone, please say something to someone. Know something, report it.
Yeah, that's what they say. Know something, see something, say something.
Mm-hmm. Do it now, please. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming back and going on this journey with us. We're in season 4. And like I said before, we are not stopping. So have a great week, everyone. And we will see you all back on Wednesday for Round Robin. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.